The Packers will have a first and goal. Receiver to the right, Jimmy Graham. Rodgers, quick toss in the flat, left side, got his man for the end zone, and a touchdown.
First and Goal podcast on Spreaker.com. And we're now on all your favorite platforms: iHeartRadio, Spotify, Castbox, Google Podcasts, Tumblr, YouTube, and SoundCloud. You can always follow us on Twitter at First and Goal Pod and our Facebook page, facebook.com/First and Goal Pod 33.
Get money, yeah. Every day I'm hustling. 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 3, 2, 1.
And welcome, everybody, to another live edition of First and Goal with me, your founder and producer, Jay in the UP. We will be joined shortly by Dave, your host with the most, down in Georgia. He is currently doing, hashtag tag life and putting his last child to bed. So we're going to talk just a few minutes. We are having a special episode on this Monday night to bring you a nice little interview with a player returning for a second time. Defensive tackle of the Green Bay Packers, Kingsley Keke, the 5th overall pick this last draft out of Texas A&M. The guy has showed up and showed out all preseason. He was not active for the Bears game. Unbeknownst to the rest of us, we could not figure out why, if he was a healthy scratch or he had a last-second injury or something like that, but definitely could not understand their move there of why they would choose to have him inactive when he was such a good player in the preseason, playing against ones, twos. It didn't matter when he was on the field. He definitely showed that he was worth his roster spot and to me worth being one of the starting 4 defensive linemen, in my opinion. And I know when Dave gets on, he will agree with me also. Other than that, lots of great games. There's great games on right now. The Saints game is on right now. The Texans definitely look like they're made the right move in getting Jeremy Tunzel in that trade. It's definitely showed up, helped their offensive line and Deshaun Watson. But just across the league, there was some great games. I mean, just great games everywhere. Kansas City had a great game, although we lost Tyreek Hill, which for me leaves me scrambling on my fantasy team because he was my number 1 pick this year. I picked him 7th overall in my fantasy, in our First and Goal fantasy league. I got a few waiver claims out there because of that. But I mean, offensive football, other outside of the Bears-Packer game, hasn't been completely as terrible as I initially thought after watching that Thursday night game, that's for sure. The other thing I did notice, defenses definitely look very good all across the league. And there has been some really good defensive performances. And then, on the other flip side, there's been some not-so-good performances. As far as fantasy implication goes, there's been a few defenses out there that are definitely had no points awarded to them. So the running back situations, and here, let's get into this, and we'll get more into this, just because it's been a subject across there. The Dak Prescott contract situation. And from a fan's perspective, and not being a Cowboys fan, I love the fact that they are going to overpay for Dak Prescott. Love it. Because everybody now, yesterday, after that game, this morning, all the pundits out there are like, the ones that are Dak, supporters, that are the ones that are talking that he's a top 10 quarterback or better than that and deserves all this money and this and that, were pounding their fists on the table saying, look at that game yesterday. And I guess it just makes me laugh because that game yesterday only instilled more confidence that the take that Dave and I both share is even more obvious. He was spreading the ball around. He had all day to throw. The run game was working. Everything was going just however they wanted. And they're telling me all these great throws. Just a few highlight throws, not great touch. Some throws that were off target, caught by the receivers, made great. No zip really on the ball. Not a tight spiral. I mean, there's a lot to be desired yet from Dak Prescott. Regardless of his statistics and winning the game and all this, as a fan and non-fan of the Cowboys, I love that they're going to pay him $35+ million. Because what it's going to end up doing is they're also winning, which pushes them back in the draft, which it makes it harder to get the premier players that they have surrounded him with in over the last 3-4 years he's been there. And they've also paid a lot of guys. There's about 8 or 9 guys now outside of Cooper and Dak Prescott that have gotten paid. And so the funny thing that keeps being said is this idea that, well, there's plenty of money to go around. The cap increases every year. Well, the cap only increases about $10.5, maybe $11 million a year. That's essentially 2 mid-tier players' contracts, or it gives you an extra amount of money to boost a premier player's salary to the point where you might actually be able to afford to keep him if you can structure it right. The idea that people out there that think that now you can pay 10 players premier salaries because you have an extra $10 million a year is funny to me in and of itself. It doesn't add up mathematically, and yet this concept is continuously used for that reason. And now we are finally welcome with your host with the most, who's going to jump in on this conversation. And right now, Dave, what we are talking about is I am talking about the fact that I love that Dak Prescott is probably going to get paid, and how I believe that yesterday only affirmed my belief in that he is not as good, whereas people, the pundits out there that are Dak supporters, are basically pounding the table, pointing to yesterday, saying, see, he's every worth bit $35 million or more, da-da-da-da-da, he's better than golf and all this. And I'm just laughing because to me it was like, yeah, it just showed you that they've surrounded him with all these toys, and now with all the contracts they have given out and the 2 left that they're going to do, they're going to pay Dak now and they're going to pay Amari Cooper if there's money left. And they're winning, so that also pushes them back in the draft is my point also, Dave. This is going to start to crumble very fast on them. And I love it, as I'm saying, Dave, I love it as a non-Cowboys fan from the fan standpoint. I'm really not speaking from an analytical football point of view right now, so to speak, if you know what I mean, Dave.